Hello, Dr. He. Are you ready? We'll
Yes,
have
I'm
Donna
ready.
comes up first, and then we go from there. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Recording in progress.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome back for part 2. And thank you for joining us for today. My name is Donna Chow, and I'm your host and your moderator for today's eLotus webinar. Here at eLotus, we have been hosting educational courses for over 2 decades, and we are proud to be your trusted source for premium CU content with over 200 speakers, 700 courses, and 3,000 hours of continuing education. I hope that everyone enjoyed yesterday's part 1 neurology webinar, quite informative as we proceed with today's webinar, TCM Neurology, with focus on senior degenerative diseases, part 2, presented by Dr. Chong He. Before we begin, let's go over quickly the logistics in case anyone was not here yesterday. The webinar will run from 9 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and we will have 4 breaks, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Dr. He will let you know what time that will be. Lunch is scheduled from 1 to 2 p.m. For lecture notes, you can download them directly from the Blue Course Access page in your eLotus account. And to use the webinar chat room, we do ask that you please set your chat preference to everyone so that everyone can be part of the conversation and see what you're typing. To ask Dr. He a question, please enter your question into the Q&A box. We do have a full class, so we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And finally, the quiz and the video replay. You will be notified by email tomorrow once they are both available. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Chong He, who has been in practice for over 35 years. As an acupuncturist, he specializes in acupuncture and Chinese medicine for neuropsychiatric and ophthalmic disease clinical research. He is the CEO of Oriental Asclepius, as well as vice president of the American National Association of Chinese Medicine. I mentioned previously that Dr. He taught a weekend ophthalmology course with us a couple of years ago, which is now available for purchase as a distant learning CU video. In this class, he taught us how to treat trachoma, cataracts, optic atrophy, glaucoma, and molecular degeneration with herbs and acupuncture. When I get back to my computer, I'll post the link for you guys. All right, so let's begin today's class and welcome Dr. He. And Dr. He, please take over now. And would you please share your PowerPoint?
Welcome, everybody. Come back to this class. Yesterday, we started class part 1. We introduced something general information about neurodegenerative disease. From today, we're going to start with very detailed disease. The first, let me just share our screen to all of you. Give me a second. All right. Yesterday, we just start talk about the little bit information about the Parkinson disease. Let's just get a quick review about the Parkinson disease. Yesterday, we introduced something about the etiology. We know that Parkinson's disease could be caused by many reasons, mostly genetic factors or environment toxicity involved, the reason. And we also introduced a little bit about the Chinese medicine because we noticed that Parkinson's disease may associate with a lung channel. In other words, we call it the tie-in division in our body. All right, so besides this, we already introduced about a little bit the manifestation of Parkinson's disease. We introduced about some motor symptoms, especially the primary motor symptoms. Maybe you still remember if people have resting tremor, and that is what the disc shows, right? And the bradykinesia and rigidity and posture instability. And also we mentioned something, not the primary, but the still very important symptoms in motor is freezing, feeling, and micrographia, mask freeze, and unwanted acceleration in movement, and other motor symptoms we always mention that you will see from all other books. It looks like so many symptoms we could see: dystonia, stupid postures, impairment, fine motor, problem, especially the motor functioning. Motor function is get really affected, and akathisia, even people have this speech problem, in this very severe case, even associated with people something like swallowing and cramping, drooling, all these kind of motor symptoms we could see mostly in our clinic. And other than that, the Parkinson's disease also have so much symptoms in sensory, especially smell loss in the early stage of the disease. And people has a behavior problem, sleep problem, constipation, and there's a lot of autonomic conditions, okay, and also has emotional, mental symptoms, psychiatric or psychological conditions. And this is what we just go over. After that, we start to discuss about Parkinson's disease diagnosis. Clinically, if we want to diagnose Parkinson's disease, we have to clarify, there are three types of Parkinson conditions in clinic. First one is a primary Parkinson's disease, just in common. Primary common Parkinson's disease is supposed to be the one, exactly is what Parkinson's disease means. Other than that, we have two types of Parkinson syndromes. One is Parkinson syndromes caused by, another neurological injuries or toxins or infections or autoimmune conditions, all these kind of reasons. And we call it Parkinson syndromes. Another disease we call it Parkinson plus syndromes, because Parkinson's disease itself is neurodegenerative disease. But if some neurodegenerative disease happened in the central nervous system and finally affect to the substantia nigra and cause Parkinson-like symptoms, in this case, we will think about it. This is a Parkinson problem either, but we cannot call this primary Parkinson disease. We give them a name like a Parkinson plus syndromes. It is still Parkinson syndromes. If you only treat the Parkinson condition, maybe it doesn't work, because the real problem is another part of, neurodegenerative disease. All right, so this is why we give this Parkinson problem, the different definitions. All right, and then we discuss about the criteria of Parkinson's disease, of diagnosis, how to clinically as a neurologist, how can we make a clear diagnosis of Parkinson's disease? This is very important, because a different diagnosis will get a different prognosis. And patient, the consequence of the patient is, patient could expect different consequence for sure. So because of this, clinically we have to be careful. Every time patient come to your office with the Parkinson conditions, you have to check by your own, and then give your own clinical impression. of course, we have to know by our license, we cannot make a clinical diagnosis for that, right? But in general, very, very strong evidence for the patient to get the diagnosis should be biopsy. So clinically, by pathogenic condition, this proposed criteria of the histopathogenical confirmation should be this patient at least has one, loose body to notice in the neuron in the superciliary nigra area. That is a very strong evidence. Otherwise, everything just on air. We cannot fully confirm that. All right. So, but if you see the slides, don't have it, we always strongly recommend you have to search for different slides. As long as you found one, that should be the strong evidence to get final confirmation. Of course, the biopsy in clinic is not practical because we cannot make a biopsy when the people are still alive. So this is why clinically we have to do clinical assessment. That somewhat could be very important for the patient to make a diagnosis. Your clinical assessment somewhat is very good evidence because actually today the proposed criteria of confirmation that still based on a lot of clinical observation. So because of this, clinical observation is still very, very useful. So in clinic, we claim that the most important symptoms most important signs for for Parkinson's disease diagnosis or recognition, so it should be the high muscle tone. Okay, this is number one. So high muscle tone, we could check on the arm or could check on the leg. So as long as we notice, the muscle tone on the limbs getting higher, so we could give the first impression about Parkinson's disease diagnosis. But it's not enough. Clinically, if we could get another, symptoms like especially like primary motor symptoms, that should be more supportive. And of course, no matter what kind of supportive symptoms you have, even you have high muscle tones been noticed, you still have to follow the law, because as long as you found any evidence about central nervous system impairment happen, something like a stroke, MS, or virus infection in the central nervous system, or like autoimmune impairment happened in the central nervous system, we have to ruling out of a Parkinson's disease diagnosis, because that's only Parkinson's syndromes. Okay, so this is what we introduced yesterday, but also we mentioned that clinically we could make a general clinical severity assessment. The most common method we use is a Henya scale system. Henya scale system, we even cannot call this a system. This is just the assessment. The assessment totally based on patient behaviors. And we notice that most people in acupuncture clinic, maybe around the Henya, step 1 to step 3. Step 4 is more difficult, make patients show up, but home visit still works. But Henya 5, scale 5, mostly they don't react by acupuncture that much, So this is a general clinical diagnosis. Clinical imaging diagnosis or electric diagnosis is not recommended by neurologists, but sometimes it's still useful. Over the time, as imaging technique get improved, people more and more start to use the imaging system to localize how severity of the injury it should be. So most of the time we will see our substantial nigra system is a very, how to say, it's very hot. And let's see in this way, if you have a 20% of damage in this substantial nigra area, maybe clinically you don't have any symptoms. So if you have more than 50% damage, probably you start getting symptoms. So clinically we have to say, if a patient already have visible symptoms or patient already suffering about the condition, we have to realize in our mind the substantial nigra system already get almost more than 50% damage. So this is what we noticed in clinic. All right, so that actually gave us clue, if this really get damaged, imaging test probably helpful, but still very hard to say that because every people is different. But MRI technology development make this visible. So this is what we start to introduce a little bit about X-ray and MRI or another electric, central nerve gram, gram test for Parkinson's disease. This is not specific or very indirect, but sometimes clinically you put them together, somewhat helps. All right, so now let's see first X-ray. All right, actually CAT scan is X-ray. All right, MRI is not X-ray. CAT scan, the resolution is not that great. So these two images I downloaded from the internet, and this is what the very successful, radiologists, they just catch this area really. All right. So this area is the middle brain. Okay. So this is the exact area that the substantial nigra should be. Should be. And from this picture we will see, okay, but maybe most people just ignore it. This area has a huge area of a lower density area. So that means people has a huge injury in this area. The lower density, always means, sometimes neuron in swelling, edema, or maybe necrosis, or maybe apoptosis. This happened. No matter what's happened, and the original density should be reduced. So low density area in this picture always significant. All right, so we see this area, low density area, and the low density area in this area. So this is the fossa of the foot of, of the cerebellum. But this is, right around the middle brain area. So this is the section. All right. So let's go to this image. This image also indicate this. So this is the middle brain. This is the middle brain in MRI. This is the MRI image. And then we see the huge lower density area in this. Okay. Maybe this huge area cannot show up on the CAT scan, but they could show very clearly on the MRI image. So that is very typical. Okay. So if people have this condition, we will see, patient, damage is right down there. So this patient, maybe have a Parkinson conditions, okay. And for a long period of time before MRI become more popular, we also have an indirect way to check Parkinson condition from an image system. This is a fossa, the middle brain fossa. This fossa, if nigra substantia nigra getting atrophy so bad, this fossa getting bigger. Okay, so this one getting much bigger. Okay, so in this case, could give us a general picture about how these people, the substantia nigra should be. All right, so this is X-ray, but because it's this area is so small, clinically, each section of the picture sometimes sometimes reach to more than 1 centimeter. So sometimes the section maybe just go through of it. Just we are technically it's a little bit difficult to handle this. Cannot guarantee we could make it. So that's why clinically sometimes we miss that. But doesn't mean it's not there. We still could see. We could see sometimes people really catch it. All right. So this is X-ray. Or MRI. We could see. Vividly. Through our eyes. Another thing is we call it ABI. ABI is auditory. Auditory nerve and pathway check. So ABI actually somewhat is kind of EEG, something like electric, electric, the brain test, and this is the EEG, just ABR, just record from MBR machine. Okay, so we put a sound near the patient ear, and then your auditory system from ear all the way to the temporal knob in the brain, cortex, will react, electrically. So we could see that. We could see that an auditory nerve, and cochlear nucleus, upper olives, different organs in different parts. Okay, so we see the different waves indicate something. And in some reason, okay, if these waves are getting lower, this area it's almost reached to the thalamus is too high. For the Parkinson disease, it's a little bit lower than the middle brain in this area. So for sometimes patient will shows something wrong around this part. Okay, so this is what we always check for them. These people maybe don't have MRI. I put this here just for the example. Sometimes, when the people wave is too lower in this area, or maybe they don't have it unreasonable going down in this area. It's always a means. Okay, it's always a means. This area is weaker, and indirectly, it's not directly. Okay, indirectly could explain. Patient, this area already weaker. The important in clinic is sometimes patient have already has symptoms, but from an image seems not okay. But what that means, the patient don't have it? No, symptoms already tell, but we could have found something wrong in electric way. Okay, in electric way to see that. And we also could check patient VEP. VEP is still kind of we call it evoked potential, visual evoked potential, and we checked it. This is not good image for the VEP. I'm so sorry, I take a wrong picture. Okay, but mostly in clinic we check, like P to 500, P 300 in that waves. Somewhat seems like the same like ABI. ABI from auditory pathway, EVP from a visual pathway. Both. Let's see if how to say, if auditory pathway, we check through this pathway, check like this way in our head, see, in our head like this. Visual pathway, check like this pathway, okay. They all could see electrically our, in the middle brain area, how your electric excitation looks like. All right, so that's the way we check. We just make assessment for the patient with Parkinson's disease. All right, so this is electric test, but just like I said, all of this is indirect. It's not a very, solid, evidence. But we use it in clinical research because sometimes we notice that, patient after acupuncture, we could make an electric change first. Okay, I have to tell you, this picture we see now is not the right picture. I put the wrong one. Okay, unfortunately, but well, when we could, maybe future we're gonna show the better image for the VEP. Okay, all right. So this is what we are interested about, because acupuncture is very, this kind of electric test is very sensitive for acupuncture reactions. We sometimes give us confidence. When we do needle there, we see this area, EVP or ABR says, the waves changes. Of course, it's not only one. We may have a, 30 sample and check and finally make sure this is really makes sense, has significance, right? So that is interesting. And that's actually give us more confidence, why acupuncture somewhat, could make patient beneficial to the patient. All right, so this is the diagnosis part, but most important part still criteria of diagnosis. That's always important, right? Okay, so after that, we go into Chinese medicine diagnosis. How Chinese medicine diagnose Parkinson's disease? I, sometimes I check from our textbook. The textbook always taught us people, degenerative disease is a deficiency. Mostly deficiency is spleen deficiency, liver deficiency, kidney deficiency. Okay, so what should we do? We have to work on these 3 organs and tonify them. Okay, if people have a severe liver young, surprising, okay, with the internal wind, okay, in success, so we have to treat that problem. Actually, this textbook really affected by Etienne Si's opinion, because Etienne Si noticed that for all the fibroid disease, because the original pathogen start from heat, so the heat always attack the upper jaw first, and then deplete our yin nerve, and then when they affect the lower jaw, and the yin division get depleted, finally wind will start. All right, and this theory seems like probably not. They use for everywhere, but we have to say, for the wind disease, not only heat, could be everything. So this is why there's a lot of dispute, controversy happens in actually earlier stage of a Ming Dynasty in China, and that's probably like 600-700 years ago. And people just questioning about this because because they always think, it could be many reasons, the internal wind could happen. You may say, hey, Dr. Hu, the internal wind, was pointed out by Zhang Jingyue. He is supposedly the middle age of the Ming Dynasty. Why is it a controversy? Because controversy is not a start from the Qing Dynasty, Yi Tiansi, Ming Dynasty. That is later time, right? Actually, the controversy started much earlier. Actually, for a long time, period of time, a lot of people think, the wind maybe just from heat. You will see, like in Florida, hurricane always, attack us every year, right? So why hurricane gets so bad here? Almost every year we have hurricane seasons because of the heat, right? So, but, we have to know, not Florida. Sometimes, tornado is going to start in the middle part of the USA. That is happen. So this is why we always say wind could happen everywhere. We cannot, every time we think about the liver wind, just think about the liver. Or every time we think about the wind, just because of the heat, because the liver yin and kidney yin depleted. Maybe it's not that, that is not, in other words, that idea maybe cannot cover every cases. So that is the idea, right? So if you don't really fully agree with your textbook, in other words, if you throw your textbook away, what you will think, you have to make something you could, convince yourself. You could, make yourself feel reasonable. So what do you think? All right, so of course, the first, just like we mentioned yesterday, Parkinson's disease is kind of a disease of yin. So this is the Chinese medicine philosophy. Every time when patients come to you, first things, you are not asked this disease is what the diagnosis is. Somewhat we have to say, this is yin or this is yang. In general, okay, if this disease is very, how to say, active, make a lot of noisy, and shows a lot of redness, dryness, hot, we always call it yang. Instead, if this disease shows very quiet, stiffness and tight, rigidity, and difficulty in move, and the patient mostly mentally negative mental, looks like depression and anxiety. So we could call this as a yin. All right. So now, if a patient of Parkinson's disease come to you, the first things in your mind should be, oh God, it's so confusing. We don't know this is the yin or the yang. Because this patient got a tremor. Tremor is a wind. Wind is yang, or that patient may be yang condition. All right. I don't blame you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, wind is yang. But if you look at this patient's general condition, holistically you will know, oh, these people has rigidity. They have a high muscle tones. They have a freezing. They hard to initiate, all these kind of things is yin. And also people has a depressed, anxious, you never could see patient has a very positive attitude, even, aggressive attitude. No, negative, lost hope, lost interesting, something like that. So this is just all these kind of symptoms give us general background about this disease. This is yin. Now, question is, if this is yin, why people getting trauma, this kind of yang symptoms? Now let's just check the trauma. I cannot say Parkinson's disease is the lowest frequency trauma, we knowing, but it's really low. Okay, according to another trauma, Parkinson's disease is the lowest. Mostly we see in the clinic. We cannot say this is really nursed. Maybe we didn't see somewhere else, something. But in our clinic, we could see lowest one. Okay, the trauma is very slow trauma. We call it rolling periods, right? So this kind of trauma is kind of, if very fine, fast trauma is yang. This kind of a slow rolling periods trauma supposed to be yin. That makes sense, right? So we could generally attribute Parkinson's disease from yin. Okay, now I put the second topic to the first. We know this disease is the yin problem. Okay, for the spirit, Parkinson's disease, yin problem. The spirit state, this patient is difficult to expressing or difficult to receiving. Difficult to expressing or difficult receiving. So let's analysis. Okay, this disease, patient want to make a step and his leg is freezed. Very difficult to initiate one step. That is difficult in expression. That makes sense, right? Difficult expression. Difficult make one step forward. That is stiffness in the Yangming area. Yangming area, right? So the difficult expression so difficult. So that is the line, right? So in other words, difficult expression, that is the spirit of Taiyang in trouble. Okay, so this is what we discussed last time, right? And then if he start walking and he cannot slow down, his step is looks like the festating step. It's very unstable, right? What that means? These people difficult to holding down. What the problem? That's the Yangming problem as well, right? The Yangming area, because they could express, they even cannot hold, cannot stop it, So this is a problem. And then if you look at patient has a difficulty turning, okay? The body is difficult in turning, okay? So it's not only difficult to express, but also difficult to stop and also difficult to switch between, between forward, expressing and closing. So spiritual from a yang phase, all wrong. Why? Because these people have a yang problem. His yang is extremely weak. That's a problem. All right. So let's see. Does this patient has a difficulty to receive something? No. This patient is very sensitive. They receive everything. They understand everything. Okay. So they are okay. Sometimes they still could eat. Appetite. Some people, because of medicine, sometimes people digestion is not bad, So this is okay, for the receiving in part, receiving not bad, right? All right, and stop receiving. Can we close that door anytime they want? No problem on this. No problem on this. All right. Does these people can, tend this? These people can get this, can turn this material he received to the yang phase? We didn't see any evidence for that. We didn't see evidence for that. Okay, so from the spirit part, we know Parkinson's disease in general is a problem in the yang area because people cannot express themselves, cannot stop expressing, and even cannot switch between. So that is a problem. This is a problem. So we just do general analysis about the spirit state. Okay, the spirit state. Why this yang, get this trouble? Mostly we will see yang problem because that is excess syndromes. No, not necessary. Yang problem could be excess, could be deficiency. For Parkinson's disease, we will see they have a deficiency of yang. How do you know these people have a deficiency of yang? Deficiency of yang, it's always this condition, relied on the support of internal material. Okay, so when the internal material, good enough, they could lasting. If it's not good enough, because the lack of the provide, they get depleted. So this patient seems like over the time, people tend to very exhausted, So that's the general. Okay. Some people may just confuse. Hey, Dr. He, you talk too much. Yesterday I remember you talked about the lung channel, right? Lung channels. Why today you talk about the yang problem? Yes. Well, if people weak in yang, that's because his yin is not good, but the symptoms doesn't happen in the yin level. Doesn't mean the yin is 100% normal. They don't have symptoms so far. All right, so that's the idea. Yin and yang never could separate. If yang already get trouble, yin, you said, I'm okay, just a yang problem. It's never happened, right? They always have some problem. But only thing that we could say, yin and yang, the symptoms happen on yang phase and not common yin phase. But it's not all the time, we still could see something from a yin. First, what are we going to see? Patient lost the smell. What that means? That means the tail-yin is not good. They lost the ability to receiving, right? Lost ability receiving. And people start getting more stubborn. Why they get stubborn? Because tail-yin, they are difficult to receive anything, receive any suggestion. It's not only food, even suggestion. They're stubborn, So that's the reason, right? And let's see the liver. When the liver is not good, okay, the material they received cannot be simply converted to support the yang. That's exactly the problem. The reason the yang is weak, because the yang supposed to get support of yin. Yang cannot get support. What the problem? Because the liver problem. sorry, I'm wrong. Sawing supposed to be the area. So the sawing has a problem, right? So this is what the problem is, right? So yang and yin always have some trouble, and there's a sawing problem. And before I just said something wrong. I'm so sorry. Sawing supposed to pivot. They convert the material to the yang phase, but he cannot do it. Right? And Juyin actually is not good either, because when people try to open, okay, or try to stop receiving, open receiving, it's not so smooth. So symptoms happen on opening, but actually the problem happened from Juyin, from a liver. So that we could see all these kind of conditions. Clinically, actually, we all see that, Tayin, mostly Parkinson disease happen on the Tayin in the upper part of body. So if you see Parkinson disease, you will see his head, his body cooling like this, right? In Huang Jing, it's always said, no matter what condition, what disease, okay, if you one day you see people, the head is just like this, only one thing, because the chest is weak. This is Huang Jing said. Okay, so can we say that? Huang Jing, Parkinson disease, chest is weak. So that's the condition. So we analyze all the situation here. And then we start to do organs identification. Actually, I already did. Organs identification should be, almost every organ's associated. Three phases of yin organs, all right? 3 phases of yang organs, all involved. Does the organs of the lower jaw associated with this? The answer should be yes. Because this patient finally lost the control of the pee and urination, and so another lost control of pee. Sometimes the bowel movement, and people lost the desire of the sex. More or less. Sometimes people lost in very early stage. Some lost in a period time. After in the Henya 3, 4, and they start lost desire. But most people lost sexual desire. Okay, and that means lower jaw is also involved. But in general, upper jaw supposed to be the most affected area, the most victim area. So that is the general image. So if this is our analysis, what's the channel meridians supposed to be? What the meridian supposed to be? Okay, the meridian supposed to be, I have to say, almost most of the meridian, all involved. From all of this, I'm gonna highlight 2 meridians. One is a non-meridian, another one is a dual meridian. Okay, dual meridian supposed to be central of the head. In my eyes, dual meridian is Taiyang, because this is the most central area of yang expression. All right, so that's it. And the reality is that this patient, from the beginning, I just not get taught, started from 215, they started stiff and tight. And gradually, this stiffness going down, 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 to the neck and to the thoracic, to the lumbar, and end to the tailbone. Whole spine is so tight and stiff. Okay, so tail area never get relief. All right, so this is what Parkinson disease meridian identification. Is there any other meridian associated? Yes, according to patient's condition. Some people may need to be associated with need to be more, GB channel. Some may be associated with a little bit more about the heart channel. Some may be associated with a little bit more about the spleen channel. Every people may differ, but the long channel and the dual channel supposed to be highlighted. Okay, supposed to be highlighted. So this is what I mentioned. All right. So passaging. So what kind of passaging should be? You may know I didn't write anything passaging there. All right. I didn't write the organs there because this is what is very hard to tell. Almost every passaging could be, but in detailed patient, maybe just one or two, not everything. Okay, but it could be everything. Okay, so if a patient has Parkinson's disease, they may have a wind attack. That's exactly that happen, right? So they may have a cold attack. They may have the patient may have a dampness attack. Okay, sometimes even have a heat. Okay, sometimes people may have some other pathogens, blood stasis and phlegm. Everything could happen. Right? Everything could happen. But people pathogenic involving could be preference in different constitution. In other words, if a people's constitution is too cold, mostly cold pathogen attack. If a people is very, very sensitive, okay, the wood type of person, his wind signs should be very, very whelming, So it all depends on person's constitution. Just like we said, what kind of pathogen you attracted or attracting, what your type of person you are. Okay, so because of your constitution, you may attract a different kind of pathogen. So that is clinically, we could see. All right, so in this point, we are not really treat the pathogen, actually we treat this kind of person because the cold person has a cold pathogen attack with, and the wind person has a wind pathogen attack with. That is what this kind of person will be. All right. The path of advancing, we have to say, it's all about the solution of the spirit. Just like we talk from the beginning, all the disease has a solution to improve. But without the spirit, nothing is really improved. Because our original spirit will participate. So as long as original spirit cannot participate, or the situation is so bad, whole body, meridian, chi and blood, everything in chaos, and this deconstruction happen, make your spirit get so exhausted, and then your spirit will not stay there anymore. We just leave. All right. Or the spirit cannot just leave. They will stay on the entrance because this is his home. He doesn't want to leave simply, right? He just look at any possibility we could help, okay? If he confirm he cannot help them, he just leave right away, and then people die. If he think we still could help something, he will try to come and do something. So this is what somewhat your spirit stand on the entrance and waiting for. So in that situation, what should we do? In that situation, what should we do? So mostly we have to, do treatment. So last time we discussed about how make your spirit stronger. This question is not accurate, because the spirit, you never could get this stronger, even never get weaker. You only could refrain them. You make them more inefficient. Your spirit always there. We can do nothing for him, right? All right. So the spirit stayed on the entrance and waiting for any possibility that could help. So this time we have to do something for ourselves to make our body better. That is what we treat our body. Actually, is treat the spirit, right? So this is a kind of idea, right? So what are we gonna do? So we could figure out, what exactly happened in the patient. Actually, I already explained to this. Entire body is a chaos. The biggest problem is excessive yin in the chest. And also excessive yin in the, I put in the liver, in the kidney. The liver means 追yin, and kidney means 烧yin. So all this area is cold. All this division is cold. Okay, so upper jaw, lower jaw, all cold. So Parkinson's disease, you will see, in the beginning, his upper back is curved like forward, okay, curved forward. In the end, even his lower back curved either. So that means the condition from upper jaw gradually switch to the lower jaw. So when the condition go into lower jaw, and your spirit think it's uncurable, they just leave, right? They just leave. So that's what they do. So what we could focus on from this slides, I think it's so clear, right? So we have to get rid of this code from Tai-yin, from Jui-yin, from Sao-yin. Okay, so this is what we do. You may say, hey, Dr. He, you said all the problem from yang, right? From yang. I said this yang is a deficiency. So deficiency yang best on the yin, because yin doesn't doing his job. Okay, yin doesn't doing it. So yin doesn't receive enough material. So Jui-yin doesn't control this receiving and opening, receiving and storing, and Sao-yin cannot convert to the yang. That's all problem included, right? So we know the location, and then we need to know what's the pathogen is. All right, we have to say pathogen is phlegm, coldness, windedness, blood stasis, and dampness. You see, everything is yin. Everything's in. Okay. So I think from here, how to do treatment, the answer already there. I guess you already feel so confident. I know what should I do, right? Yeah. So this is what we always say. Clinically, if you analyze disease and make this you understand what this disease exactly is, the treatment it just come naturally, right? The treatment idea come out just naturally. So this is pretty simple, right? Pretty simple. So I always said that Parkinson's disease patients use dopamine. Okay, so what exactly dopamine does? Dopamine actually originally is not really designed for Parkinson's disease. We have this med for a long time, and I think it's about 1783. James Parkinson first time noticed and make a note for Parkinson's disease, and he make a lot of neurologists laugh at him because they just said, "You are not a neurologist. How you could describe the Parkinson describe this disease? It's just ridiculous." But 100 years later, after he passed away, the neurology, the neuroscientists noticed that, 100 years ago, this guy is right, right? This guy is right. So you see, it's so interesting, right? But dopamine used for Parkinson's disease, that is last century, about the 60s. Yeah, not too long. All right. So people use this because from a body biopsy, we notice that patient has a dramatically dopamine, proportion dopamine concentration lower in brain tissues. That's the reason. Okay, and then it's so interesting. It's something like a coincidence. Dopamine, this kind of medicine, is somewhat looks like nicotine, something like that. Okay, if people use that, will make skin flash, will make people hot, will make people heart beating faster, will make people exciting. All right. So, and make people feel joy as well. So you see, Western medicine, they even don't know yin and yang. So they use dopamine actually just to try to give people more yang energy. That is exactly what. So in this point, we're going to say, no matter Western medicine, Chinese medicine, that is just coincidence, right? Coincidence. So this is so interesting. Even today, the dopamine replacement is still the primary treatment. We don't have any other choice could be better than that. All right, so after that, let's just talk about treatment for Parkinson's disease. So every time we discuss about treatment, we have to talk through these 5 topics. The first is systemic corrections, because the systemic correction is the most, essential treatment. Think about, when your original spirit stand on the main entrance of your body. Most people believe that it's probably be 2:15, right? He stand there, and waiting for you, and still looking for our body if anything, he still could do something. It's only thing we could do, we have to clean our house first. All right. So to clean our house, we have to make our systemic corrections come true, all right? And do it as much as we could. All right, so after that, we also could talk to the original spirit. Oh my God, don't leave, okay? Don't leave. We still have a chance to correct ourselves, okay? And looks like, the husband and wife just about divorced. People try to make a last, negotiation and see if still could keep this relationship on, right? So this is a spirit resetting and spirit management. And then we could do some nutritional support, because this is a chronic disease for long run. If disease keep going, people always has a more or less nutritional condition. But this treatment we don't really recommend in the early stage. Of course, in that time, patient don't need it. Pathogenic removal is a part of a systemic correction. And we just technically more, detailed discuss about how we could do it. What is the better way, in this treatment? What should we do? What do we have to be careful? This is what we have to say. Of course, symptomatic treatment for this kind of chronic disease is so important. It's not only could change people's life quality, but also could build up the hope for the patient and keep this treatment, going on. So these 5 things we put together become a group of proposal in treatment. All right. So in clinic, maybe you guys are waiting for, hey, Dr. He, give me some points. Very miracle, very good for Parkinson's disease. I cannot give this miracle to you, because the miracle mostly come from your inside. You could see something, through all the knowledge we introduced. So if you could see the situation clearly, so you even don't need me give you some solution. You cannot help yourself to try this, try that, right? So that is the idea. All right. So now let's just discuss a little bit about systemic adjustment. If for excessive yin, too much yin in your chest, in your lung, what should we do? What should you do? So here, I try to thinking what kind of formula we use. Actually, the ideal formula for warm the chest is a formula we call it 宁肝五味姜心汤, come from 金匮要略. Frankly, I used to use it in clinic. It doesn't work so much. I really, frustrated on that. So sometimes we tell coldness in lung is not exactly like the lung condition. We also have to know lung condition, cold lung could cause asthma, could cause profound phlegm, could cause coughing, could cause depression and sad and crying. Patient lost encouraged living forever. All the symptoms we all could attribute coldness of lung. But for Parkinson's disease, we still think this is the coldness of lung. Only things we need, we try to find a formula more associated with this kind of, how to support the yang phase because this entire system cannot open. This valve cannot open to accept most yang energy from our body. So if you talk with Parkinson's disease, you tell him, hey, don't worry, okay? We're going to help you. Acupuncture very useful for you. This patient, his emotions stay in very negative attitude. They don't really interested about that. They don't really believe that. So we used to have a free, seminar for patients, in community. We used to say, okay, we already see some patients get improved. We just think, all this treatment free because we get a grant from government. You could come to our office, we do treatment for you. This patient said, who cares? So much cheatings, all right? I have to think about, maybe 10 years later, most people start to, they are not open mind to accept a new idea. So this is what, this is from altitude, you will see the spiritual is not open to receive the new idea. And patient is so stubborn, so that all the family members get so frustrated on this, right? So in that moment, so what kind of treatment may be more beneficial? Okay, so I searched a lot. Finally, found one formula. Unfortunately, this formula we still cannot use in USA, right? Because it is a Ma Huang Tang. Okay, this is Ma Huang Tang. All right, so let's just go and take a look what this formula exactly is. So this formula, the first line, the ingredient, first line is Ma Huang Tang. Ma Huang Gui Zhi Xing Ren. Oh, it's wrong. Spelling is wrong. Not Xiong, no O. Okay. So Xing Ren. Don't worry about this. I will send Donna the text, for the formulas to you guys. So you even don't have to make notes. Okay. So I'm gonna send the text of this formula to you. You will not miss it. Okay, you just listen. This is a spelling problem. 杏仁, okay, almond, right? 甘草, 麻黄桂枝杏仁甘草, that's 麻黄汤. That's 麻黄汤. Okay, after that, they add 细辛, 干姜. Okay, I'm not sure you fully understand what I'm saying. You mean if you need a Latin name, because of time. Also, my Latin is not good enough to say that, right? So I cannot tell that. Okay, you just I'm going to try to explain what my idea is, okay? And then we will see 人参, 精神, 当归, okay? And 川芎, this looks like a 四物汤, all right? And 白术, 茯苓, okay? Some people recommend 黄芩 there, okay? So this formula is interesting. This formula is interesting. So Ma Huang Tang, where I used to discuss about how to get rid of coldness from upper jaw, especially for the yin phase. It's not yang phase. Yang phase is simple. Ma Huang Tang, just release, boom, boom, just release it. Use aromatic, sweating, hydraulic, ingredient, just release directly. But in the yin phase, we just cannot do that. We just cannot do that, right? So for the yin phase, what should we do? What should we do? So this actually set a good example. So for the yin phase, as you know, you released energy, release the code from Ma Huang Tang, and at the same time, you need to tonify the energy from inside concurrently. Otherwise, you will cause imbalance. So this is what, this formula we call the 一元麻黄汤. 一元麻黄汤 come from 孙思邈千金方. I think somebody made it about 1500 years ago. People already noticed that every time we try to release the coldness from the yin phase, we have to tonify and refill same time. Because if you empty some part, you have to refill something inside. That is important. Okay, so this formula, if we explain, is very simple. Just the Ma Huang Tang plus 四君子汤 and 四物汤 together. Okay, 四君子汤 together. They don't use 熟地黄. Why? Because 熟地黄 is too cold. So we take 熟地黄 away. All right. So we see this structure. This formula make lung organs release something, refill something, need to be stable, okay? Still stay in balance. But we know this formula for coldness. They use 细辛 and 干姜 to warm internally. Okay. I had to mention that formula is so interesting. Pungent ingredient to warm your body, always good in upper jaw or middle jaw. So this is good, 细辛干姜 warm upper jaw better, right? So that's the idea. So this is the general ingredient for the 一元麻黄汤 for the upper jaw warmness. Okay, upper jaw warmness. I feel much better. So use this for the Parkinson conditions because they warm patient either and better. All right. And that is the general structure of the formula. But, just like I said, sometimes if a people's constitution is hot, even you affect the coldness, you still sometimes have heat internally generated. So, if people have internal heat generated, what should we do? So in this formula, they put the huangqing inside. They put huangqing here, they said, don't put it in a formula. If you confirm these people have some heat, okay, just use little. Just use little. So that is the formula, right? So now we understand what's 一元麻黄汤. Okay, 一元麻黄汤 exactly is, right? 麻黄汤 plus 四君子汤 and 四物汤. And use the 细辛and 干姜 warm upper jaw and put the huangqing as in a waiting list. So that is the formula, right? So, okay. So by doing this, we could see, okay, your patient the chest get warming up, okay. You may say, hey, Dr. He, if we we are in USA. If we cannot use Ma Huang, we cannot use that formula anymore, right? If we cannot use Ma Huang, what else we could, use for substitution? Substitution could be various, I think a lot of people already have your own answers. Okay, some people may like to use Fang Feng. Some people may like to use Jingjie. Some people may try to use, some other stuff, okay? Here, I'm going to recommend Fangji, okay, Fangji. Because Fangji is herbs work for the chest better. Okay, work for chest better. If we compare Ma Huang and fungi, Ma Huang could release the exterior from upper jaw. Fungi do the same thing. The Ma Huang could drain in the water and get rid of the edema. Fungi does the same thing. Okay, Ma Huang could treat a condition in the chest, something like stop asthma. Fungi doesn't. What fungi do? Fungi move for blood stasis in the chest. For another word, if people have some blood stasis in the chest, fungi may the best choice. All right, so since fungi has irreversible characteristic and infusing, right, and also could draining the water and could promote the circulation, somewhat could be better, to replace the Ma Huang if we are not for, cannot use Ma Huang. All right, so this is the 医元麻黄汤. So that's what I will try to recommend. So now we take a 15 minutes break. Okay, we see you guys 15 minutes later.
Recording stopped.